Lost, Found by Jeremy Ryan. "20 years ago, my 9-year-old brother, Sean, disappeared from the front yard of our home. Like a fart in the wind, as they say. I won't get Best Brother award for saying shit like that. It was a terrible thing that happened, after all, and I feel terrible that it happened, of course, and everybody feels terrible that it happened. All my life, one terrible thing has happened, but whatever. It was in the summer of '92. Or was it the fall? My brother and I spent much of our time rounding up neighborhood kids for baseball games in which we were the star players. Or, more often, we were acting out our superhero fantasies, which usually ended in squabbles over something stupid Sean did, or that he said I did. We both had inflexible visions for the roles we played back then, both vying for a center stage, and both unaware that Sean's sudden absence would put him in the spotlight and put me in a behind-the-story interview with myself. I remember tall, stern men in police uniforms prodding me for clues. Popo is a slang term for cop that we don't use much anymore, along with pig, which I still like, and, going back further, fuzz. The Popo are just a hassle to me now, and they might as well be wearing rubber noses and spraying water from their badges. If they didn't carry firearms and sport itchy trigger fingers, I'd throw pies at them. The police then, when I was a kid, and according to my memory, were different. Like they cared and wanted to know what I had to say, speaking slowly and deliberately and listening with bated breath. Did I see anything unusual? A strange car, perhaps. Did anyone talk to us? Did I remember anything? Anything unusual? You mean like my mother dying inside all at once and blaming me for it? Not helpful. She was a glowing young lady once, my mom. If you could see her now, you would never have guessed. She immediately lost hope, I think. The more I reflect on the past, the more it seems this way. But did it actually take years of her looking at me with accusation and disgust? It doesn't matter. Maybe she doesn't hate me at all. My recollection grows murkier by the year. I get occasional blips of high-definition memory. For instance, even now, when I close my eyes, I see strips of yellow caution tape and dozens of police officers and other volunteers assembling to scour the surrounding neighborhoods. Each one of them were heroes of all shapes and sizes. The one I figured to be the actual sheriff had an expression that I'll never forget. Pinpoint eyes buried in tense, unyielding flesh. To this day, when I imagine what it's like to be a man, I see him. I can picture the details of my brother's blooming, mad face from that day, also. Doughy cheeks puffed in anger around a baby scowl. A half-inch white scar on his top lip from where, the previous summer, I'd thrown a baseball too fast for him to catch. At 9 years old, he had no age lines to punctuate his mood. Red splotching said it all. I told the investigators that I had only turned my eyes away for a minute, and he was gone. Why confess that I'd left him alone for at least 20 minutes after an argument about which comic book character would win in a fight? Sean had insisted that Captain America would easily defeat my pick, Batman. Of course he liked Captain America. If you asked my dad, Sean was America's favorite son. My dad is a block of ice on most days, and I don't know that he would say much of anything about anything. The official search ended after 6 weeks. My parents never recovered. They didn't even so much as flinch from their despair the first time I overdosed on Valium. Instead, they accused me of trying to get attention. What a way to wake up from a failed suicide attempt. being berated for not doing it right is just pathetic. As infuriating as it was to hear this, it was even more infuriating to admit they were right. Life goes on, as they say. My life has been punctuated by multiple points of recovery. My parents do not comprehend recovery and so cannot relate to mine, let alone support it. As an adult, I once tried to relieve their grief with a forged letter from an adult Sean. It was stupid. Mom knew my drug-affected scrawl immediately, and I was ordered to leave the house and never return. Had I approached this forgery as a writer of fiction, I might have taken care to imagine what my brother would have been like, and where he'd been, and why he'd never returned. My fantastical image of make-believe Sean was not fleshed out at all, but my intentions were good. Good-ish. 6 months later, I was back in my parents' house. Following one of my outbursts, Dad demanded I check into a drug treatment facility again, for whatever reason, so that I would stop harassing them for money or a place to stay, or so that I would not continue stealing from them when the money they gave me was not enough. It's never enough. Imagine my shame. My front teeth are rotting. There are sores on my face. My fingertips are brown and calloused from daily use of a pipe. I fidget and scratch constantly. I don't take showers. I don't have hobbies. I don't plan for the future. I sneak around and lock doors behind me because, shit, I don't know. Is there some idiot I'm still fooling? Sometimes I sleep at a house near the city when my parents threaten to call the police. It has no electricity. 231 East Dale Avenue. I woke up there early one morning next to a transvestite who slept and drooled against a dirty sofa cushion and had squirmed nearly out of her red sequenced miniskirt. Beneath her exaggerated features, drawn on and now disarranged, was what any person might look like given her circumstances. A ruddy, hollowed cavity under each cheek where the baby fat used to be. Crusty, unwashed hair showing from beneath her wig. A small indentation on her upper lip, perhaps from a childhood scar, perhaps from a childhood scar involving a baseball. Perhaps from a childhood scar involving a baseball thrown too forcefully by her brother. She said her name was Rhonda, but I knew better. She kept a portfolio of glamour shots that I flipped through while she rattled on about her life as an exotic dancer and how many followers she had on YouTube and how they requested her by name and how she'd battled depression and recovered from multiple suicide attempts. See the scars on my wrists? Yes. See this tattoo behind my right ear? Yes, all punctuation, or something else. She was an actress, she said, growing her resume, she said, on her way to Hollywood, she said. Big dreams? Were they bigger dreams than I'd ever had? Did I feel threatened? Or upstaged? Outclassed? Outshined, outlived, outloved, outadored, outgrown, unacclaimed, unapproved, unaccepted, unaccounted for? Don't laugh at me. I'm thankful that I could feel so much again. So many emotions stimulated at once. It's amazing I didn't explode right there. I live like a fish most of the time. Swim left, swim right, eat food, stare. Who knew I was still human? Of course, I'm not a child anymore. 231 East Dale Avenue was big enough for both of us. It was equal ground for us, you might say. I could become an actor. I could have fans. There were no roles for me, but were there any for Rhonda? She squatted in the front of the sofa after a visitor had left 60 seconds after he'd arrived, and I knew the answer to that question was invariably no. No costume, no makeup, no script, no direction, no cues, no scenes, no story. She produced a syringe, opened a balloon of heroin, and began to cook it on a bent, blackened spoon. Methodical and driven, she licked her puckering lips, knowing she was the center of the room, or not, knowing I was captivated, or not. It was the first time I'd ever shot up. No rehearsals, no props, no audience, no tickets, no critics. I felt sick and warm and in love in that moment. The only moment. As heavy as cement, I saw everything from a distance, through a lens. Rhonda swayed cross-legged and mumbled about past auditions she knew she nailed, and about her former lover and pimp who was in prison for assault, and how her parents had stopped talking to her years ago, and how she didn't blame them, and what would be the point now, anyway, she said. She said, on and on through a tunnel of increasing incoherence until, finally, she dislodged herself from her high and began to dress for the evening, a shimmering slum debutante in our dank, drab, dim hovel. She sang. No auditorium, no acoustics, no amplification, no microphone. What would be the point in returning home with Rhonda? As stunning as she was with her wig on straight and her makeup redone and her long pale legs smooth and shaven and tapering down to veiny feet wedged into high heels that were too small, would they look at her portfolio with pride and say, "This is my daughter," when they can hardly look at me and admit, "This is my son"? I sank into a high that I would forever chase as I channeled this recovery. Rhonda glowed with heaven light, a corona of stardom escaping through her pores. I heard applause, cheers of adoration, the death rattle of 1,000,000 lost souls standing in ovation. When Jeremy Ryan isn't filtering his language at a real job, he likes to read and write fiction. His work has appeared in Alien Skin Magazine, Cemetery Moon, Big Pulp, and Murky Depths.